Howdy.
Hey, what do we got here?
I have a rocket engine that was used to train the astronauts before they landed on the moon.
So you have a rocket engine.
I do.
Super cool. When they first built the lunar landing training vehicle, it wasn't that stable. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure Neil Armstrong had to eject out of the thing when it crashed.
I'm looking to sell my Apollo Lunar Lander training vehicle rocket engine. I got this rocket engine from Edwards Air Force Base at a surplus auction. I'm asking for $20,000 for this rocket engine because it was directly connected to the Apollo astronauts that went to the moon and came back.
That's really cool. This is one of the rockets from the Lunar Lander training vehicle?
That's correct. This was removed from Lunar Landing Test Vehicle number 3.
Wow. This right here was a major, major part of NASA, and it was never really talked about that much. They had this crazy vehicle. It simulated the moon's gravity, which is a lot less than ours. Now, somewhere over here, there was a tank of 90% hydrogen peroxide, and somewhere past that was probably a nitrogen tank with like a few thousand pounds PSI, and right around here, there was a valve. And they would open that up, and it would shoot hydrogen peroxide down there. When you have that pure of hydrogen peroxide, it immediately reacts.
Right.
And creating 500 pounds of thrust. Okay, so right here we have...
That's actually the paperwork that came with this engine that was issued by NASA, and it has the vehicle number. And if you look, the paperwork correlates with this tag.
And you got pictures of it here in the book?
Yeah, so if you can see, the engines are actually installed in a bank of 4 on the chassis of the LLTV.
Ah, that's amazing.
Yep.
It's epic. I'll give you that. How much do you want for it?
$20,000. The flown rocket engines are very rare.
I know
Especially
they're
with
very, very
that
rare.
Traceable provenance.
I'll give you 10 grand for it.
I would be hesitant to let it go at that price. I'll counter with $16,000.
I mean, the thing is, I have no idea what this thing's gonna sell for. You have amazing provenance, hasn't been in space. I'll take a shot at 11,000.
Can you do 15?
I'll do 11,000.
Congratulations, you've got yourself an artifact.
So we got a deal.
Yeah?
All right, I'll meet you right over there. We'll do some paperwork and I'll get you paid.
Okay, thank you.
All right, no problem.
I didn't get my asking price today, but now that it's gone, it's one less thing taking up space.
Hey, how's it going?
Good day, sir. How are you today?
I'm doing great. What do we got here?
What we have here is the schematic diagrams of the lunar landing module, Apollo 11.
Okay, this is pretty amazing. The lunar module, AKA the Eagle, was the first manned spacecraft ever to land on the moon. And we poured tons of money into it. We spent $50,000, I think it was, designing a space pen, a pen that would write in space. You know what the Russians used? A pencil.
I came to the pawn shop today to sell my Apollo 11 lunar landing module schematic diagrams. The pictures are a representation of the changes that were made to the modules inside the landing vehicle. The condition is good. It has been in a sealed safe for many years. It hasn't seen the light of day until today.
Incredible stuff here. Apollo 11. It was one of the greatest events in the history of mankind. But I mean, if you just think about the timeline here, okay? 1958, we put our first satellite up, which basically did nothing. It beeped, I think. I mean, and then 12 years later, we are landing on the moon with a rocket that's like 300 feet tall. I mean, with a computer the equivalent of a pocket calculator. And we went so far, so fast. It was one of the greatest engineering projects the world had ever seen. Where in the world did you get these?
My grandfather, he worked on the project. He worked for Corning with the tiles and the heat shields for the modules.
So your grandfather actually worked on the space program?
Yes, sir.
That is neat. And do you know why he had these, or?
I think he was given this file as a gift when he retired.
Okay, I'm assuming this is like a design layout. Obviously, engineers were working with this because this is just like X'd out with a pencil. And it's pretty interesting right here. They're saying, like, you know, get rid of this. We have a new panel. These are X'd out. And this is nice that this is dated 1967. So this was during the design phase. And this is a photo of the lunar module right here, the interior of it.
Yes.
That's pretty cool because this whole thing lines up with that. Yeah, so we have pictures right here of this panel right here, which is super cool. So how much you want?
I'm looking to get $100,000.
Ooh. How did you come up with that number?
I did some research. I looked at a lot of items that were being sold for the 50th anniversary through an auction house in New York. And a lot of the things that they were selling were comparable to the price that I'm asking.
I mean, these are really historically significant, but $100,000 is kind of out of this world, okay? You start talking those numbers, that's stuff that went into space. I'd give you like $3 grand for it.
$3 grand?
$3 grand.
How about 5?
I'll go like 3,200. That's it.
Sold.
All right, sweet. I'll meet you right over there. We'll get some paperwork done.
Thank you.
Well, apparently this guy was shooting for the stars. What do we have here?
I got possibly the best piece to ever walk in the pawn shop here. You're looking at an address book signed by no other than Edwin Hubble.
Okay. An address book?
Yeah.
All right. Does this have Jimmy Hoffa's last known address?
Today I'll be selling a Edwin Hubble signed and addressed note card. What makes the Hubble note so special is just the fact that he wrote his observatory where he made so many famous discoveries. If I can get a deal done today, what I'm gonna do is take some of that money and honor Hubble and buy myself a telescope.
This is really, really super nerd cool. I'll tell you that. Edwin Hubble, I mean, really, really amazing guy. No one knew about him until we put up the telescope in space and named it after him.
Yeah.
They just believed all the stars and all the planets and all the mass was in our galaxy, and basically there was nothing beyond that. Hubble came along and later discovered, hey, this is the only galaxy. There's like a gazillion of them out there. You know, the universe is expanding.
Yeah.
When Edwin Hubble discovered that the universe was expanding, it changed everything. It changed the way we thought about physics, astronomy, and a whole lot of other things. And the fact that it's got Mount Wilson as his address, that is so over-the-top nerd cool. Or over the moon. Okay, now, the big question, how much you want for it?
So for this in particular, I would be looking for $8,000. You rarely ever see his autograph.
Okay. Do you mind if I call someone and take a look at this? Just make sure it's
Not
legit?
a problem, absolutely.
I got a friend of mine, he's like the #1 autograph guy in the world. Let me have him take a look at it, if it's legit, and we'll talk about price. Okay?
Sounds good.
All right, I'll be right back. Let me go make a phone call.
All right. I absolutely think that this requires an expert's evaluation just because when I bought this thing, I really had no idea. I'm really excited to have someone of knowledge look at it.
This is it, Edwin Hubble. To me, this is really cool, an amazing guy. His discoveries were right up there with Galileo, Newton, and Einstein. They really were.
Absolutely. And you know what was interesting? That period, about 1920s, when he started becoming popular, 23, 25, people started to know about him. People did collect autographs then. But I don't see this guy signing a lot of autographs, not a lot of personalized stuff. So he's very difficult to verify. Very few authentic examples.
Well, you gotta realize he also worked the night shift.
Yeah. There's no doubt in my mind, when I hear Edwin Hubble's name mentioned in terms of autographs, I get pretty excited. I mean, I could literally think of the times I've seen his signature live and in person. I can almost count it just on one hand. So he's that rare, and he's that desirable for collectors.
So, is it real?
Well, first thing I want to do is look at the ink, obviously. Make sure we're looking at a live signature. And if you take a look here, you kind of see the cut right through. You see the nib of the fountain pen. No doubt from what I see here, ink's live. Next thing I want to do is look at known examples of his signature. We go into the last name here, Hubble. He takes these B's, he comes over to the right here, into the L and E, and he angles slightly off with the E. And he's doing that here in this example.
Okay. So you're saying it's good?
Well, based on ink analysis, based on comparison signature, no doubt that's 100% authentic.
Okay, cool. So what's it worth?
Well, something like this, it's so ultra rare. You just don't see these every day. But it's something, obviously, you have to find a specific person for. And I could see this, you know, selling for easily $4,000 to $5,000 range.
Okay. Thanks, man.
Yeah, good to see you. Yep. Good luck, man.
Thank you.
Yep. In terms of collecting Hubble, he's kind of in this weird genre. You know, you have to find like an ultra nerd, kind of someone like Rick Harrison. So it's a nice signature, but you're only gonna get someone to pay so much for something like that.
Okay, now, what do you want for it?
I mean, I'm pretty firm. I just think it's something where, for the right person, I know you could probably get, you know, 10 to 15,000.
At that kind of price range, you have choices.
Sure.
You know, you can get Einstein for less. I mean, I would give you $3,000 for it.
Yeah. I mean,
$3,000. I think it's a fair price.
the best I would do is probably 6,500.
Yeah, I can't go 65. I mean, I'll go 3,200 bucks. I mean, that is my best offer, really.
You know.
Yeah, which is crazy for me even to go that high, but I think it's really cool. So,
I'm sorry, I just can't do it. I appreciate the offer, though.
all right, have a good one, man.
Thank you. I'm passing on 3,200 just because I think there's somebody out there that's going to pay real good money for this thing, and it's going to take some time to find the right person, but I'm willing to wait.
Hi, good morning.
What is this?
Well, that is a watch I found in a steamer trunk. My dad was a watch collector, and this was one of the watches I remember that we couldn't play with.
The world's smallest private mini radio. This is cool. Space 2005. I love all this stuff. All the old toys would be like 1999 in the year 2000, everything like that. And everyone would be wearing those silver suits with a Nehru collar.
Yeah.
They'd all look like Dr. Evil.
My father, he used to bring home a lot of space toys simply because my birthday was the day that they took off for the moon. Well, I'm going to ask for $200, and I know people get nostalgic for things of that nature, so I figured somebody might want this thing.
Does it have like a patent date on it or anything?
I know it was from sometime in the 60s.
Okay. The 60s and the space race, it was a neat time in American history. Every kid in the world loved space. We have a little picture of Sputnik right there, and that's what started it all, 1957. The Russians put a satellite in space, and everyone was like, you know what I mean? It was like the most scariest thing in the world. The Russians are in space. They're going to nuke us tomorrow then.
Right.
We figured by 2005, we would be having, like, colonies on the moon. The space race captured everyone's imagination and led to all sorts of toys, TV shows, movies, you name it. And if you had this wrist radio, you would be the coolest kid on the block. And today, adults that were children in the 60s absolutely love these things and pay a fortune for them. This is really, really cool.
What I remember, the way that you turned it on was plugging the earphone in, and the way you turned it off was take the earphone out. So there was no power switch other than that.
It did work, though. And on your wrist, you would have to run this down your shirt into your ear.
Right.
It is the first Walkman.
Theoretically, yeah, I guess it would be the first Walkman.
Yeah. Hey, this is pretty neat, though. I'm super impressed with it. How much did you want for it?
I was thinking $200 for it.
I got a buddy who's got a shop right down the street. Let me give him a call. He'll run up here. He does it for me all the time. And let me have him take a look at this thing.
Great.
I will be right back, and I'm gonna bring this with me so I can just read it off to him on the phone. Okay, I'll be right back.
I could not find anything online that could substantiate what it was worth, so anyone's expert opinion is better than none.
Good to see you, man. What you got for me to look at?
High-tech stuff.
Sweet, man. This classic 60s stuff right here. The world's smallest private mini radio. And that could very well be true. After World War II, I mean, the Japanese were jumping into transistor radios and technology, and then they started to make them smaller and smaller. Later on, they started to get more into electronics like Nintendo and other items. I mean, this was cutting-edge technology back then. Back in the 60s, John F. Kennedy was pushing for kids to learn about science. Space was big. Transistor radios were fairly new technology, and there's a lot of guys who would collect this kind of item. So what are your concerns, Rick?
Just the big thing is what's it worth?
I mean, that all looks period. I mean, that looks all right. The headphones and the box is in really good condition. It's super rare. I mean, in all my time doing toys, and I've maybe seen one other one in my lifetime, so the item's in pristine condition. I could see you easily getting in the 350, maybe 400 for this.
Okay, that much?
Wow.
There's guys who collect the old transistor radios. I mean, that guy would pop an item like this.
Okay. Well, thanks, dude.
All right, cool. I think Rick should buy this item. It has a lot of things going for it. Condition's great, so you should have no problem selling it if he picks it up.
So I guess it's worth a little bit more than we thought.
I guess it is, yeah. I would have never thought it would have been that much money, but...
Okay. Give you $200 for it.
Well, you know, I mean, the more that we've been standing here talking about it, you know, kind of the nostalgia set in, and, you know, I do remember this as a kid. He said 300 to 400.
An hour ago, when you wanted $100, it didn't have all that sentimental value. I think 200 is more than a fair price.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think 250 is going to be, it's going to be my lowest number that I'll go on this.
It's a cool piece. I really dig it. It's neat. Yeah, dude, 225 is gonna be it.
Well, I think I'm gonna hold on to it for a few more years, and we'll see if it goes up in value anymore at that point.
Okay. All right, thanks, man.
Nice meeting you.
All right. You know what? Come on, I'll give you the 250.
Sure.
Yeah, I didn't think you were gonna walk.
Well,
Okay, all right, I'll meet you right up front.
great, thanks.
Cool. Emotional attachment.
I feel great. To be perfectly honest with you, I had no emotional attachment to that thing whatsoever. I was just looking to get as much money as I could for it.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, good.
What do we have here?
Well, I've got an autographed moon booklet. Got a couple
Okay.
of different signatures in there. Charles Schultz and Snoopy drawing.
Okay, that's pretty amazing. Just so you know, when I was 5 years old, I literally was the hugest Snoopy fan. And when Snoopy fought the Red Baron, I thought it was the coolest thing I ever seen in my life.
I'm at the pawn shop today to try to sell my autographed booklet about the missions to the moon. It's signed by 2 of the astronauts of Apollo 10, as well as Ronald Reagan and Charles Schultz. I'm asking $10,000 on it. I'm trying to buy a house, and so it would go toward that.
This is really cool. So where'd you get it?
Got it at an estate sale a few years back.
Okay, so this looks like NASA in the 1960s. The whole moon program's here. Probably something from their PR department commemorating everything they did. The 1960s with the space race was absolutely insane. John F. Kennedy said, "We will be to the moon by the end of the decade." Most people said, "Are you crazy?" Okay, I mean, you're just being a politician, that's impossible. But in the end, it turned out JFK was right. So who's this first signature?
That's John Young, one of the astronauts, Apollo 10.
And this one right here?
That is Stafford, the commander.
The cool thing here is you have this thing signed by Charles Schultz. Charles Schultz worked a lot with NASA. On Apollo 10, they nicknamed the lunar lander Snoopy, and Apollo 10 was the first time they did color broadcasts from the moon. To make sure that the color was correct on the cameras, they held up pictures of Charlie Brown and Snoopy, and even to this day, it's still one of the logos NASA uses, so it's really cool. Charles Schultz did not sign his name very often, and the fact that you got Snoopy below it is really, really cool. And then on this page, we got Ronald Reagan. That's really cool. And the Ronald Reagan thing sort of makes a little bit of sense because Ronald Reagan and Charles Schultz were good friends. He even declared one day Charles Schultz Day. They corresponded a lot.
I think the astronauts went to Sacramento. Charles Schultz actually presented them with some type of an award, each of the astronauts. It was some kind of a Snoopy-related award. That was the opportunity for them to get together.
And some very wise person got one of these books and went there hoping to get autographs, and he did. Now, how much you want for this?
Well, I just want to throw out $10,000.
Okay. You got some really cool stuff here. The astronauts' signatures are worth good money. The Ronald Reagan signature is worth money. The Charles Schultz, my understanding, can be worth a lot of money, but actually sounds a little high. So I have a buddy, he knows everything there is to know about autographs. So give me a few minutes, I'm gonna give him a call.
All right.
Now, Charlie Brown, definitely the best hairdo of any of the Peanuts. Well, here it is. We have Reagan, we have astronauts, we have the 1960s. Here's the super special one.
That's pretty cool right there.
Yeah.
So Charles Schultz was part of the space program at its inception in the 60s. So that's kind of a big deal to have him associated with space stuff. I don't see much stuff like that. The history of the book, I mean, I'm guessing just based on the astronauts in there, is that post-1969 to 1972 range?
Yeah, Reagan was governor, and Schultz presented a little Snoopy memento to the astronauts at that particular time.
Oh, nice. So they were all together at the same event. Okay.
Okay, so what do you think?
Well, let's take a look and kind of see what we have here, first of all. You know, John Young had a pretty basic signature. You know, his J's were very distinct here. And again, I kind of see the same thing here. So let's go over here to Reagan. The thing I look for in Reagan is the volume of the R's. Typically with Ronald Reagan, his R's were different heights. And that's a great indicator when you first start looking at them for the real ones. And it's the same thing on my exemplars, the same thing here. But this is the big one, Rick. The thing I like to look for is he had this fantastic autograph that usually was connected. So Charles M. Schultz. And he'd always bring these two together. And we're seeing kind of a similar pattern here. He had just a free-flowing signature, went to the right, but take a look at that, and it's almost perfect here. Now, the dog is a little different, obviously, because let's just say he's drawing with a marker. It's gonna be a little different than a pen, and that's pretty neat in itself right there. To be quite honest with you, it's a great-looking piece. Signatures match up perfect. No question about this, Rick. It is fantastic.
All right, so the big question is, what's it worth?
So based on everything I see here, signatures are all real. I think the book is worth about $3,000.
Okay, well, thanks, man.
Good
I
to see you.
appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you still want $10,000 for it?
Well, of course.
I mean, what would you be willing to take? I have to frame this stuff up. I have to resell it. It takes time.
Quite a bit different from what I was thinking, what I had in mind, so.
It's because you were shooting for the moon.
I mean, could you do 2,500?
No, I'd give you $1,500, not a penny more.
I might have to hang on to it.
Won't take $1,600?
Nah.
Okay, well, have a good one.
All right, thank you. I'm a little disappointed in the value. I'm not interested in selling it for peanuts, so I guess I'll just take it home with me.
Hey, I have this newsletter from the 60s that my dad got working for the space program. It's signed by several astronauts and test pilots.
Whoa.
These guys were pretty badass. Imagine going home and telling your wife that I'm gonna go be the first person on the moon.
I'm here to sell my America's Space Pilots newsletter. I got this newsletter from my dad. He was a purchasing agent. He would order parts that the astronauts needed, and every time they came in, he would get his newsletter out and ask them to sign it. I've had the newsletter for about 15 years because it's one of a kind.
That's pretty cool. So this was like a NASA newsletter or something like that?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. These were real common with just about every company and government agency because in the 1960s, there was no internet.
Right.
So they made the little company newsletter. What was going on? What are we doing this week? Oh, this is really, really cool. I mean, you even start off great. You start off with Neil Armstrong.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, gotta say, badass Hall of Fame right there.
Frank Borman, Charles Conrad, whoa, James Lovell. Some of these guys are the ones who passed away at the Gemini accident. It talks about space school.
Women in space.
So was this like distributed to the public?
No, there are a few are in existence, but none signed that I've ever been able to find.
It's pretty incredible, I'll give you that. So what are you looking to do with it?
My sister and I would like to sell it.
I just go party a lot?
I was going to ask you when you were going to take us out tonight.
Okay, so, all right, how much were you looking for?
$15,000.
Okay, I don't know. I know some of these signatures are pretty rare. Let me call somebody up. I have a buddy who's an autograph expert, and he deals with this stuff all the time. And he'll give me a better idea what we can get out of these things.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
So I'm gonna go give Steve a call. I'll be right back, okay?
Okay. I feel fine about the expert coming in just to let us know for sure that those are actual autographs of the astronauts.
Here is like the holy grail of astronaut signatures.
No doubt about it. Anytime I hear about astronaut stuff, I get excited because the early stuff is amazing.
I mean, wait till you see these things, okay? I mean, very first one, Neil Armstrong.
Okay. So the interesting thing is you had two different groups of astronauts. You had the first astronauts, the Gemini astronauts. Then in '62, they brought in a whole new group. Now, Neil Armstrong was part of that group, and we know what Neil Armstrong did, the first man to walk on the moon. So his legacy will live forever.
So what did Neil Armstrong do after he went to the moon?
He was still involved with NASA, but then he became a professor. He lived in Ohio for many years, and he was kind of like a more or less of the face of NASA, too, for a long time. You know, whenever anybody looked at NASA, they looked at the guy who first walked on the moon.
We also have all these other ones, too. I know some astronauts died during the early test flights. I think some of those guys are in here.
Ed White.
Okay.
And that happened really, really early on in the space program, so I don't think his autograph would be that common.
Well, it's not, and you know, that's the thing. So, you know, obviously I just want to take a look at the ink first and kind of just see on a few of these, especially with Neil Armstrong, Rick, because when you talk about the guy who's going to drive the value of everything, it's only going to be one thing, it's Neil Armstrong. So, and you could just see this right away. That's definitely live ink on there. Now, I like to look at examples, too, of kind of how these guys signed during the period, and I do have some stuff on file. Neil Armstrong, his signature was usually pretty beautiful. You know, he had this big N, flowed down here. So no issues on that. I want to flip this page here. And this one is one of the coolest signatures here. You know, Ed White was our first guy who actually did a spacewalk. Obviously died too young. So really tough autograph and beautiful signature. And once again, he puts his two after. These guys took pride, Rick. You could tell they took pride in their signatures.
All right, so what do you think they're worth?
Well, you know, based on what I've seen here, price comparisons to other stuff, I do follow this stuff pretty actively. The nice signatures, they're all beautiful. I put the value of this right about $4,000.
Okay.
Good to see you.
Appreciate it, buddy.
Yep, good luck. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Steve.
Okay. All right, so how much were you looking to get out of it?
Well, my sister and I talked about it, and we said if it wasn't going to go for very much, we would just keep it in the family.
Okay, because I would give you $3,000 for it.
No. We're going to keep it in the family.
Well, thanks for coming in. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
And if you ever do change your mind, you know where we're at.
Thank you very much. I didn't make a deal today because I felt like the offer was too low, but I'm going to take it home and keep it safe and maybe try again in a few years.
All right, what do we got here?
Oh, it's G.I. Joe Buzz Aldrin.
One of the first men on the moon.
It was one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Yeah, except he didn't say that.
Oh, you did?
No, Neil did.
Neil did.
2, 1.
Came down to the pawn shop today to try to sell my Buzz Aldrin G.I. Joe. It's got to be worth at least $100. I'm looking to sell it today because I need to do some work on my car, and any little money will help.
Where'd you pick this up at?
We went to a swap meet and I found it.
Okay, it's pretty cool. You know what? I like to do crazy stuff, but going to the moon was one thing I would have not done. There was a real possibility that they weren't going to get back. The Apollo 11 moon landing was one of the greatest events in human history. It made instant celebrities out of Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. I mean, to this day, they are the most well-known astronauts ever. Well, it's in good shape. It's still in the box.
Yeah, I've been pretty tempted on opening it and looking at it, but I figure, you know, value-wise, better leave it.
No, this stuff is worth a lot more money when it's left in the box. Some of the older G.I. Joes go for into the thousands in really good shape in the box. No one ever thought a G.I. Joe doll was going to be worth anything. I mean, I had him as a kid. Actually, when I was a kid, it wasn't a doll, it was a guy. But G.I. Joe is one of those classic toy brands that every little boy knows and loves. So I won't have any trouble finding a buyer for this thing. But even with the original packaging, its resale value is pretty limited. What do you want to do with it? Pawn it, sell it?
Probably looking to sell. I need to work on my car.
I hope you're not banking on this thing. Unfortunately, it's pretty new. It's 99, it's not old. I will give you $25 for this.
Well, it's still 35-year commemorative.
Here's the secret on this classic collection. Anything new that is sold to collect is not going to go up in value.
$25 is the most I can pay for this thing. I mean, it might buy a set of pads.
Well, give me a tank of gas.
Okay, that's what I can do, $25. That's what it's worth.
Okay, you gotta go.
All right, I'll meet you up front. Let's go write this up.
Cool. I thought that I'd make at least $7,500. It's only worth $25 today, but I'll take what I can get.